of it, and a lot of it was cyber related, right? So firewalls, configuring routers, doing, anti-malware, antivirus. Security was obviously still very much a big thing even back then. And that was at British Telecom, which is BT, which is kind of like AT&T, but in the UK is probably the comparison that I generally make. Worked there for a while. Straight out of high school. I was never one really for classroom-based learning and learning theory. I mean, it has its place, and I've learned a lot of theory over the years, but I was very much somebody, even when I was a kid, that was kind of learn by doing stuff, taking stuff apart, analyzing things, learning by seeing other people doing stuff. And I think that's what drew me towards the apprenticeship route, really. But yeah, straight out of high school, went into an apprenticeship at BT. And you're thrown in on day one. You're thrown in the deep end. You are out with engineers. You're out with different people in the organization, and you learn those skills early on, and those business type, organizational type skills. And yeah, from day one, that was where I was at, observing and visiting customers and businesses, and being like, okay, this is what it's like to be in a professional environment and things like that. So spent a few years there. Worked in media for a while doing engineering, and then kind of went into specializing specifically in cybersecurity as a security engineer. Moved up to more of kind of a designer, a kind of architect type level position. And then now here I am as CISO. Moved to the US last March. So I've been here about 18 months now. That's kind of, I guess, a bit of a background on myself.
So, I mean, that's an exciting journey, and I'm sure there were multiple steps along the way, right? Or different we'll call them gates. I'm trying to draw a blank of a good analogy here, right? Of gates that you hit in your personal career, and honestly for the apprenticeship. What is one thing that kind of sticks out in your mind that you learned or maybe took away from your apprenticeship program, several years ago, that kind of still sticks with you all these years later?
Yeah. I mean, I was 17 at the time, so as I said, I was straight out of high school. I think the biggest thing that helped me with the fact that I did this apprenticeship was, as I was kind of alluding to, being thrown in the deep end, but also building on those kind of professional skills, and the being in that environment from such a young age, and learning, like, okay, when a customer is not happy with something, this is how to deal with it. When you're looking at a technical problem, these are the kind of the kind of steps that you would take to kind of solve a problem. So like problem solving skills and things like that. I think that learning the technologies, there's a place for theory-based learning for that, and that was part of the apprenticeship. But I think the biggest thing that helped me was the fact that you're in there and you're doing it, and you are learning from professionals. I mean, in my instance, my mentor, I think at the start, had been working there for 30 years, so he'd seen it all. He had dealt with a variety of different people. He'd had to explain complicated technical things to non-technical audiences, and things like that, and that has certainly helped me, no doubt.
So when you look at now, right, so you find yourself, you're in a spot where you can hire, right? You're leading an organization, security efforts. What things have you brought into your day-to-day, right? Kind of stacking on that last question, that has informed the way you were hiring as an organization. Are you implementing a skills-based type of hiring, or bringing some of that mindset into your organization of hiring, or how have you implemented some of the basics that you learned through apprenticeship in your current day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, so from a hiring perspective, in my team, if I'm hiring, I'm not just looking for, do you have a degree, or did you go to university or college, or it's, for me, I have taken what I learned and the approach that I picked up on with my apprenticeship of you don't have to have a real big technical background, or have you don't have to have taken computers apart at a young age, or having the technical knowledge is not a barrier to having a career in cyber. So if you have a willingness to learn, and you can observe somebody else, or you can you work well with others, for example, then that to me is a hireable skill over so taking an example, if I take compliance as an example, maybe SOC 2, the framework SOC 2, or maybe the ISO 27001 framework. Maybe you don't know the NIST framework, or maybe you don't know about FedRAMP, for example. Well, for me, like okay, you must know FedRAMP on a job ad, or using that in an interview is that a hireable thing or not, is not necessarily the right approach, because if you can learn one, you can learn the others, and it might take some time. But if you have that skill set and that ability to learn from others, to me, that is more important, and that is very much you are hireable in the sense that you have those kind of professional skills, I guess.
When you look back at your time, that's a great answer. And I think, the approach around skills-based hiring, we've had a lot of internal dialogue, and right before we hopped on here, there's this idea, and a huge shift within our country, and I think across the world, of this traditional versus non-traditional. I think for the first time in the history of the world, right, we're questioning, is a 4-year degree is the juice worth the squeeze for these things? And are they the determinant of success for an individual? So I anticipate that this skills-based hiring continues to grow, right? We're seeing governments and organizations make that transition. What can we do, or what can employers do along those lines to really create an environment that is conducive to skills-based hiring, or really, maybe eliminate some of the degree requirements? And just for the record, as an asterisk, I'm not negating the importance of college education, just for the record, right? It's equally a great pathway to get skills, and will continue to be. But the reality in 2023, and I think from the beginning of time, is that college is a great option for some and isn't a great option for everybody. So, having two concurrent paths that have different kind of objectives and outcomes, but yield the same result, is a positive thing that I think gives everybody, access to high-paying career and jobs that I think we're all looking for. But what are things that we could do, as a company or as a country, to really help facilitate skills-based hiring better?
Yeah, and some of what you said there, kind of, I totally agree with everything that you've said there, in terms of, it's a college-based education is great, and it is a viable option for a lot of people. I think the key here really is flexibility. So it's having an option for, okay, if you don't want to take that approach, and you want to land a good career, or you want to work in cyber, then that should be an option. And I think having that flexibility of, it doesn't matter what type of learner you are. If you learn by doing stuff, and you learn by being thrown in the deep end and being given a firewall to configure, or you're straight in and you're working with customers, for example, like I was, that may be the way that you build your own career. And I think what we should work on really is having, like you said, having two options, and having that flexibility of, okay, you don't have a degree, but you have a couple of years experience, you did an apprenticeship. Well, that should be recognized, in the same way, I guess, as what both options should be recognizable as something that is, makes somebody hireable. And I think that's what I noticed when I moved here last year, was that, in the UK, that is very much the case already. A lot of job ads and a lot of employers will say, okay, well, if you don't have a degree, we're looking for some level of experience. And if you've done an apprenticeship, that meets that, right? Like if you've done a 2-year or 1 year or a 3-year apprenticeship, you have experience. And if anything, it probably solves that whole thing of like, I need a job, but the job needs me to have experience, but I don't have experience, so I can't get the job, kind of thing. And that kind of cycle of where you can get stuck, and you kind of feel like, well, how do I get the experience without having a job? Well, perhaps maybe an apprenticeship is the option there. But yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, when I'm hiring in my team, I'm not just looking for, do you have the piece of paper? And that is absolutely something that is valid. And if you do, and you have a degree, it's a viable thing. I think it's just about having that flexibility for, you know, like people like myself, where I didn't want to go to college because I just didn't think I would enjoy it, and I didn't think I would succeed. So I found an apprenticeship, and, you know, it has helped me, no doubt.
I think apprenticeship has been successful for a couple reasons. One, just, you know, you're getting paid while you learn, right? And I remember early on when we started this journey with apprenticeship, all too often we were finding that people that found themselves in a transition point, maybe let go or downsized in an economy or whatever, but oftentimes it was a choice of working or going back to school to gain new skills, right? And so, you know, for those that have families and things, you know, that going back to school in a full-time option and not, you know, earning income, you know, isn't viable for them, and they have to find a way. So apprenticeship is a great kind of vessel for that. You know, especially even like you describe in your own scenario for young folks graduating high school, you know, or college isn't, you know, I don't think I'm going to be successful. And I don't know the statistic. I'm sure that's out there of the number of fresh, highly motivated 18-year-olds to go to college and have it all figured out. And after their first year of, you know, university, they come back because it really wasn't what they'd hoped it would be, right? They've done some different things. You know, so I think there really is a combo of both. If you know, there was an attraction for you, you know, many years ago, and I think there is a stark difference between the current structure of the U.S. apprenticeship model and what the U.K. has created over the last 10 to 15 years. Will you break down a little bit, you know, the variables of those things and why you think it has had such good success in the UK with apprenticeship?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the UK apprenticeships are very much kind of structured in a way that there's a central kind of list or central kind of requirements that have to be met for example, for an intrusion analyst, or for a governance, risk and compliance person, or for an engineer, or for a cyber defender and responder, for example. And I think in a way, and those standards are very flexible, and they were set by some employers and so forth, some large employers that take on apprentices. And I think as a result of that, and with the flexibility and the kind of, I want to say they're quite open, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's a one, or, you know, it's a 10-person company or it's a 10,000 person company, the standards themselves are still going to be relevant to that position. And I think in a way that has really helped, in the sense that you complete an apprenticeship. So you complete you might be, let's take the engineer as an example. So you're a cybersecurity engineer, you've done an apprenticeship in that specific field in cybersecurity. Well, as a result of it being a standardized thing, any employer theoretically should recognize that as, like, you know, that's a UK apprenticeship. It's in cybersecurity engineering, and this is the standard that person has had to meet to be able to pass and complete that apprenticeship. And I think as a result, it's kind of landed it in a space where, you know, it's like a degree in the sense that you've done certain things to get it. It's just that it's something that you've physically done, and you've been in a workplace and you've met the requirements, rather than you've studied the theory, you've written a paper on it, or you've written you've taken that approach, kind of thing. And I think that helps, because then it doesn't matter what employer it is, it's kind of a nationally recognized thing of, like, okay, they have this apprenticeship under their belt.
I think the U.S. aspires to get to that level, right? You know, I look at the billions of dollars spent over the last, I don't know, 8 to 10 years of just the resurgence of the model, right? It's always, I think, has gone strong in, you know, the trades, you know, but this idea around coding and cyber and data scientists to be able to come and do this has definitely evolved. Where I think the UK has really stood out, you know, stood above other countries in this, was just some of the government support and buy-in, right? There were some laws that were put into place that encouraged, you know, apprenticeship adoption. There was incentives provided to encourage apprenticeships. And then there was, you know, really an entire ecosystem or industry, right? Like just like cyber as an infosec is its own kind of industry that has an economy its own. Apprenticeship really has that in the UK, right? There are trainers and assessments and tools and and intermediaries like CyberUp, where it's just a normal occurrence, right? Oh, I need to do this. Great, I'm going to go here and get my support. And I've oftentimes wondered, like, what do we as a country need to do to get at that level, right? Is it good policy? Is it state? Is it federal? I'm rambling. I don't necessarily have a good answer, but if you could, wave a wand, maybe have, replicate that success as the UK for apprenticeship to the US. Is there anything you think we're missing or would probably need to add to help get that going bigger and better?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it goes back to what I was just saying about the whole having a standard and having something that, it doesn't matter, where you did that apprenticeship, it is recognized everywhere kind of thing. And I think that would help not only from an apprentice's perspective, but also an employer's perspective, in that it is a recognized thing. In the same way that, I went and did my CISSP. Everybody knows what a CISSP is, or most people know in security what that is, and they know that you've done the exam, you've studied for it, you've done the exam, and then you have to do your kind of CPE every year or every 3 years, and do that renewal, and you have to prove that you're continually learning. Well, anybody who knows what a CISSP is knows that that is what you have to do. And I think again, degrees have their place, certifications have their place, and apprenticeships have their place. I think they're all viable options. But I think having that kind of structure there, no matter what state you're in, no matter what employer you work for or where you do your apprenticeship, I think would certainly help accelerate it here in the US. And I think it's been a huge success in the UK. I think it's really going to help us solve the skills gap and everything in cyber as well. And people of all ages from different backgrounds, that doesn't matter with an apprenticeship. I think that's an important thing to point out, is this can land you a good career, and it's good for the employers, it's good for for individuals all around. I think having something recognized centrally is definitely would definitely help.
Yeah, I am a fan of less rules and regulation than 99% of most things in my life, but I definitely think that there are opportunities with some good policy and legislature to, I think, kind of push this concept of apprenticeship and adoption a little bit further, right? And I've said it multiple times throughout, different episodes of the show, is I think we've had a mediocre adoption of cybersecurity apprenticeships across the country, because employers are still trying to figure out how that skills-based hiring works, right? And our degrees there, and I've even just over the last 2 weeks, I just read an article that there's colleges, are scrambling a little bit of admission numbers are down. They're trying to reimagine and do a little bit of what apprenticeship is doing, right? Let's create experiential learning opportunities for our students when they come to these 4-year degrees. And the article was really centered around how do we blend that to traditional and non-traditional thing, and how can colleges help facilitate that in a better way. My concern is those are two very different worlds, and this is coming from 6 years of experience of seeing other organizations try to jump in and do this, and it's really hard, right? And I think fortunately for our particular sector, everything we're being told, right, is that there's this massive shortage of people, but then there's hundreds and thousands of people that have gone and invested in time and energy, whether it be a boot camp or apprenticeship or degree. And there are tons of people struggling to find that job, right? That first job. So, what do you think is there's a puzzle here, a puzzle piece here, and a puzzle piece here, and we're missing something in the middle to kind of link those two. And that's a big question, mindful of what I'm asking. But is there something you think that we could try to link between that gap of skills attainment to apprenticeship adoption, and really do that for that employer base?
Yeah, I think the employer is probably key there. I think there's a lot of work to do to have employers understand the value of having apprentices in their organizations here in the US. And, they go back a long time in the UK. I mean, one of my managers at my previous job was an apprentice originally, and he probably started his career, I don't want to offend anybody, but probably 20, maybe even 30 years before me. So it's been going on a long time, and it did gradually kind of expand to other industries. I mean, back then, and again, when I did my apprenticeship, there weren't cyber apprenticeships as such. They were more we were kind of in the middle of it, kind of being a transition of when it was a trade-based thing only, of like plumbing, electrical, construction. It kind of started to move into, okay, IT, network engineering, it was a kind of that kind of stage. But this goes back a long time, and I think in the UK, a lot of employers have, as a result of that, do see the value. And I think it is only a matter of time here before that happens. But I think the work that we need to do is to really put it out there as this is a good option. You're going to get people that are eager to learn. Then they're going to be people that want to learn stuff. They're eager. They learn by doing. They're going to be out. I mean, for my employer, obviously the value was they had me coming in. I was super eager. I learned by doing stuff, and I was paired up with somebody that had been there for a long time, and working directly with them. It was like, okay, well, they're teaching me. I'm learning, all of those important, not only the technical skills, but the professional skills. And my employer is getting an extra person that is assisting and, installing equipment for customers, generating revenue for the business. From day one, right? Not from somebody who comes in on a different path may not kind of land straight in there. They may not, you're getting that. I call it the experience clock. The experience clock starts from day one, and I think having employers understand the value of what they're going to get as a result of this is probably going to be key to more adoption, I think.
So, for those that are tuning in that are really trying to figure out, right, like, I really think I want to do cyber, get into InfoSec. I'm not sure the best pathway. What case would you make as apprentice to encourage those folks to look at apprenticeship as a viable option?
Yeah. Yep. So and some of it goes back to what I was saying about, learning by doing, and maybe not feeling like college is the option for you. And that can be for any number of reasons. Maybe, you don't feel like that's the best way that you learn. Maybe you're more hands-on. Maybe you just don't want to go. I mean, that was for me. I just did not find, personally, I did not have it didn't appeal to me, kind of thing, at the time. And I guess I was probably still learning at the time about how best that I personally learn. So it wasn't just that, it was just, I just didn't have, it wasn't appealing to me for whatever reason. I think the best advice I could give is probably that an apprenticeship is a viable option, really. I mean, it may not, you may not kind of jump straight to it and be like, okay, yeah, that's definitely for me. I would encourage anybody to look into it as an option, especially if you're unsure. Because I mean, I think if I remember rightly, when I looked into it, I don't actually know how I found out about it. Yeah, I don't remember, but I came across it, and it wasn't like a light bulb moment. It was like, that's going to be for me, kind of thing. I had to go for the way that it worked was I had to go for an interview, and there were other people there, and some, it was effectively a job interview at that point. And I remember talking about some of my passions in IT and technology and things like that. It was only when I kind of started that I was like, yeah, this is definitely for me. I love it. I'm being paid. I don't have any student debt to worry about. I'm learning. I'm working for an employer, a good employer at that. A nationally recognized, internationally recognized employer. And you're there, and you're in that surrounding, and you've effectively started your career from day one. So I think it's a viable option. I would say to everybody, like, even if you're not sure about it, look into it, and very much consider it, because I don't think I'd be where I am right now if I went to college. It's not that again, it's not that that's not a viable option. I just don't believe that I would be where I am right now if it wasn't for the apprenticeship, because of the fact that I was in there at such a young age, and that gave me the skills to be able to accelerate and progress my career.
You were essentially LeBron James or Kobe, right? You started at such an early age, it gives you much more career time, right? That's a great parallel, right? Cybersecurity and professional basketball players. I can see the correlation. The athleticism that's exuding out of IT folks, I'm sure, is top. Some sarcasm there, but I appreciate the insight. I mean, that is, I think of my own journey. I had it all figured out at 18. I went to college. I went to St. Louis University. I wanted to be a pediatrician. Took my chemistry and my bio classes in a really weird setting. I'm talking to my daughter, who's a freshman at Oregon right now, and she's sitting in classrooms with 350 people, and of her closest friends, and taking tests to master knowledge, and that's not a good thing for everybody, right? And so, I think to your point, really finding the best way you learn and what is going to be the most viable option for you to eventually get to a job, right? And I think the one thing, jobs are great, money is fantastic. Finding joy and purpose in the things you do is more important sometimes than some of those other things. And, I think cyber does a really good job of providing people purpose, because there is a little higher calling, if you will, to some of the mission of things you're doing, of protecting networks and other things. What advice, last question, because we're running out of time, what advice would you give to folks that are looking to level up their cybersecurity career?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it doesn't matter what age you are, what background you have. If you're looking for a career in cyber, very much consider an apprenticeship. Look at what it did for myself, and if anybody wants to message me on LinkedIn, wants some advice, feel free to do so, because I just love helping other people. I would just say, if you, and I'm trying to think of the word that you just used there, the kind of having a purpose. And if you feel like you need a career with a purpose, cybersecurity is absolutely it. Because that was another thing with the apprenticeship, was from day one, I had a purpose. I felt like I was making a difference, and giving my time, learning something. It was a win-win all round, really, for everybody. And consider that it doesn't matter, like I said, what age you are, what background you have, where you are at in your career or your personal life or anything like that. It's, if you need purpose, then consider a cyber apprenticeship. It will, for me, it keeps me engaged. It's a career that I love. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. Granted, when I started my apprenticeship, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I always thought it would be something in technology, but I didn't really know. But looking back, it was great. And again, the other piece of advice I would give is, just because you don't have all of the technical knowledge doesn't mean that you will succeed. I think having the ability to learn, and having a curiosity, and having a passion, if I'm interviewing you and you're coming to work in my team, that is what I'm looking for, really. And that is something that is gonna be valuable to you throughout your career. I guess in any kind of technical space, but in cyber in particular, having a passion to learn, and enjoying a challenge, and that if you have that, this is the place for you.
It's one of those, it's a job that I think you can constantly find a way to learn and grow and specialize and really get good, and either be a jack of all trades, or find a way to specialty and master that skill set and really kind of put yourself out there. But Craig, I appreciate you joining us for the show today. Your journey from a young 17-year-old lad to today, to make your way to a chief information security officer. I'm sure, looking back and reflecting, there were probably moments and times of maybe a few pinch me moments, right, where you found yourself here in the US, all of which was planned and all done under the lens of an apprenticeship, right? Which is, I think, is exciting. We've had a lot of great stories along the years of our journey in an apprenticeship that we have. Time will tell for the CISO journey for some of these folks, right? Because it's, we're not that old yet as an org, but appreciate your time. Next week is Halloween, so very excited about having a show in that. I'm working on a show with a couple guests of just scary tales, of cyber hiring. So I think there's a couple folks I'm following on LinkedIn who have just had a heck of a time trying to break in. So I'm curious to get them on and really share some of their challenges. And these are people that I'm seeing doing, in my mind, all the right things, and they've checked all the boxes. But man, for some other reason, just can't seem to find it. So, Craig, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited about this and future engagements with you. And for those that haven't, tune in next week and look forward to seeing you. So again, thanks, Craig, for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Everybody have a great,
have a good one.
Great week.